All right, now, so for the reason that we're all here today is how to build search optimized landing pages. And this is a quick overview of what we're going to be touching on today. How to pick the content you're going after, as well as general considerations. But really, we're focusing today on these two right here: is building your actual content for search engines, and then ongoing optimization. And that's one thing that's kind of a misnomer. It used to be SEO was very much to set it and forget it, and you could come and it would just work. This day and age, it's better to do it as an ongoing optimization, and we'll get more into the details on that here in a bit. So why search? There is very good reason for us to focus on search engines. We all know the popularity of Google, and I'm going to be mentioning Google a lot today, and the reason is 90% of all searches approximately are handled through Google. But more importantly is when somebody's going to start an online experience, they're going to find an auto repair person, they're going to go find a new restaurant, whatever it may be. 93% of these online experiences start with a search. And of those, there's 40 to 60 billion. This is estimates. Google doesn't officially release the numbers, but these are some good estimates that have been put out there. And this is just within the US alone. And that's how many searches are happening every single month. And so it's a lot of activity and a lot of potential to be found within those searches for your business or organization. And what's even more interesting is, well, search engines have been around 20 plus years now. They're still really in their infancy, where only 15% of US active internet users are searching at least once a day. That tells us that there is plenty of room for this to continue to grow as we gain more active internet users and as people become more comfortable with search and more aware of the capabilities. So one quick side note I wanted to make is I am going to be sharing some real data today from a side project that I put together. This was with the intent of a brand new site. So I'm not building on top of anything. This was a brand new site, and all the traffic was solely from search engines, and it was used to drive actual leads and sales. I was doing it through an affiliate program, again, just for an example purpose, but I wanted to show how this could work in the real world. And I started this experiment last January, and you can see here was some of the results from that. I made 6 blog posts and a couple dozen question and answer type entries as well. But we can get into that more later. I'm happy to share some of the data of that with the actual examples and showing you how this got implemented. But I wanted to show that the proof, is in the pudding, kind of, to say this isn't just hypothetical or theoretical. This is actual results, and I'm using the same steps that I'm going to be going over today. So the first thing we need to know is, picking a target. What piece of content do we want to create or optimize better for search? And before I get into this, I do want to know how many of you are familiar with Google Search Console. And Google Search Console is not the same as Google Analytics. This is the search metrics side of Google. So this gives you data directly from Google in terms of search. And this is one of the most valuable resources because Google is very infamously known as a black box within this industry. This is one of the few times they're going to share data directly with you about your website. So I am going to be referencing this a lot, so it helps me to know if you are familiar with the platform, if you're not, and where we can start from. So it looks like we got a little bit of mixed results here. We have, a number of you are unsure, and that's very common. We find that with a lot of the clients that we work with, where they're not sure if it's even hooked up or not. Sometimes it's hooked up in the background and it's collecting data, but you're not sure where to access it or not. Brad, would you mind sharing that Google Search Console link in here? We'll share that a little bit later as we get more into Search Console, but if you are unsure, this will tell you where you can go log in with your Google account to take a look at that and see your data for your website. So what this will help us do is it'll help us determine where are we currently ranking, what are people searching for, what's our most popular content, so we can figure out where we can write content. So again, this is data directly from that experiment project, is this will tell me in Google Search Console, what are my pages that are most popular already within search? And you can go into Google Search Console and you can order it by your pages or by search queries to see what is most popular. And my recommendation would be to start at the top of that list. You want to start with the ones that are already having the most impact and make those ones even better. Because that tells you that they're already getting traction in Google. So that means that there's people searching for that content, finding the answers that they want within that content. So focus on that high quality content that you already have, stuff that's already making an impact. The next step would be, say that you don't have Google Search Console hooked up. And when you do, say if you were going to go hook it up today, it'll take a month or two to collect enough data for it to be actionable. So what could you do in the meantime? Well, keyword mapping would be one thing. And Brad, would you mind sharing the article on keyword mapping in the chat? This is the idea of trying to figure out what are people searching for so you can create a target to help them answer their question or their user intent. So there's a few different ways to go about it. One of my favorites, Google Autocomplete. And that's something you probably have used when using Google without even knowing it. And that's when you type in something like home maintenance, and then it auto-completes. It starts suggesting checklists, schedule, repairs. All those suggestions that Google gives you is because they know other people are actually searching for those phrases. So take those as a good place to start. Also, when you search, say I do search home maintenance, and I go look to the very bottom, or in this case, I did this picture over here on the right, this Craigslist HTML. At the very bottom of those searches, it'll tell you related searches. So these will tell you ones that people are actually searching for that are very relevant to what we punched into Google. So again, a good idea for where you can fit that in. If you are doing official keyword mapping and you're using a tool like Moz or Mangools or Ahrefs, those are tools specifically meant to help you with this task. They usually do carry some kind of subscription fee, but that's something if you wanted to get a lot more active in it, those are the kind of tools that you can go for. Maybe you're not quite sure where to go when it comes to the search queries. It can be tricky to go through this data sometimes. Start with the most popular content on your site. And that could be from Google Analytics or other metrics you have on your site. If you know what the most popular content does on your site, you can do that as well. Now, when you're pulling together these ideas, keep this in mind in general, is you're trying to provide value to that end user. That's how you get people from Google search results to your content. So there's a couple different ways, general ways to do that. One is save them time. So if it's the type of search where they're maybe doing research and they're trying to compare 10 different products, bring all those products into that one article, tell them exactly what are the pros and cons of it. If you can save them hours and hours of time by putting it in one succinct article, they're going to find that hugely beneficial. And speaking of benefits, you can provide an immediate benefit as well. You could give them like a PDF download of, like, say, a checklist, going back to like that home maintenance topic. Maybe you have like fall home maintenance checklist, spring home maintenance checklists that are there for them right away. Or original data. And this is another great one that people don't often consider, is maybe you've done some of your own surveys or research within the industry. Maybe you're an industry expert that has access to some information where you can provide some unique insights. But original data is a great way to attract people to your site. Also, don't be afraid to make a bold opinion. You know, if this isn't something where you're sharing data, maybe you're just sharing your bold opinion. That's something that'll get people's attention. You just don't want it to feel like another cookie cutter type of article. And then one thing too I should emphasize with these ones is it helps to pick a more specific focus. Try not to go super general. For example, I wouldn't write an article necessarily on home maintenance. I might write an article on home maintenance checklists for the fall. That is much more specific, and it's much easier to get more in depth and compete on those articles. So the more specific you can be as well, the better. So on building targets, this is another one of those I'd be curious to know, what kind of experience do you have in building pages for your own website? If you have a website right now, do you have little to no experience on building pages within there? Are you very comfortable with adding, simple pages, some simple content, maybe some blog posts, things of that nature? Or do you have a lot of experience where you've created very strategic landing pages that have maybe a little bit more rich content, a little more complex layout? So this definitely helps as well in terms of you want to be able to create great content. So this is one of the reasons I'm asking this, is I want to know where you are in that spectrum. And it looks like the majority, you have some comfort in adding web pages on there, which is great. If you don't have much experience, I think this is a good opportunity to take a look at your current website and see, how do you add new pages or posts on there? Maybe get a refresher on that, because that is going to be vital. A vital piece of this process is the ability to add that in there. So we've picked out our search targets from the previous step. Now we're looking to actually build the content. So it really breaks down into these general structures. Metadata is this right here, and this is just a fancy way of saying the title and the description for that article that will show up in the Google search results. You can control that little snippet that shows up here in the search results. And this title right here can be controlled, and this is actually one of the more underutilized aspects of building these landing pages, because this is really what's going to catch people's attention and draw them into your article. So make sure it's something that uses strong words, like, for example, this one, ultimate guide, kind of signaling that, hey, this is your one-stop shop for everything you need to know on how to format what they're going to be able to get from this, a Craigslist ad. So I have my keywords that I want in there, how to format a Craigslist ad for this particular instance, along with some strong words, along with some follow-up description to help support that. This is a good way as well. If you already have content out there, you can go back, take a look at them, see what those descriptions and those titles look like. Try tweaking it. Now, once you get onto the page itself, you want to make sure you have, again, a strong title as well as headings to help break up those sections. Headings are absolutely vital in terms of breaking up the sections, not only for just the user experience, because people like it when things are sectioned off, makes it easier to consume content and pieces, but also search engines use that to understand the structure of your site. Now, you want to also make sure when you're doing this to keep in mind proper heading structure. And what I mean by that is having a heading 1, this would be your title. Generally speaking, you only have one heading 1, and then heading 2 would be following that, but you never want to jump from a heading 1 to a heading 3, because that's just seen as improper structure, because you would always go from a heading 1 to a 2, potentially multiple 2s, and then using 3s nested under that. Proper hierarchy. So table of contents, this is something that's really kind of come back around. Brad, if you wouldn't mind sharing the blog post on the table of contents here. This one was kind of interesting because it used to be that we didn't have nearly as much in terms of table of contents on a blog post. This is something over the last few years that started to make a big resurgence, because while you have Control F to be able to search on the page, a lot of users don't know how to use that. So this allows people to be able to click on one of these links and jump down to the particular piece of content or section that they want, meaning that if somebody comes in here and this is a 2,000-word article and they don't want to have to go skimming through every section to find what they want, all they wanted was, what's the font tag? They can click on this and it'll jump them right to that specific section. But if it's another user who wants to read the whole thing, it still gives them a nice layout on what to expect. And they can still use this to jump around within the article if they're wanting to go in a particular order. Now, aside from that, table of contents has a huge benefit when it comes to search engines. And this is something that it's showing up in the data. And this is another example from that Dealer Promoter Pro. And you can see on here how this one has a hashtag at the end of it. So what happens is when you click on those bookmark or on those table of contents links, it adds this little bookmark link to the end of it for that particular section. And what's really cool about that is Google is smart enough these days to pick up on those bookmark links. So they will actually show those bookmark or those table of contents links, also known as bookmark links, in the search results themselves. So that means that you can have not only like the ultimate guide on how to format a Craigslist ad show up by itself in search results, but you can also have the how to add a link one separately so you can get multiple results within Google. That helps a lot in terms of increasing your reach and getting better expansion. And this is for content that you've already created, so you might as well maximize that reach. So links. This is another one of those that fits into the content itself. And links are very helpful in citing your resources, not only for the visitors that are going there to see, oh yeah, they did their research, they looked at these articles, this from the source, etc., and internal links on other topics that you've written on similar topics that can help to build that visitor trust. But it works the same way for Google too. Google looks at that and goes, oh yeah, they have cited their resources by using these external and internal links. So generally speaking, more links is a good thing. Just make sure that they're good, relevant links to the topic that you're on. And then this would be the most important topic out of all of this, is creating engaging content. And so sometimes I think we're worried a little bit too much about optimizing for Google when Google's own goal is to connect people with the best piece of content out there. So we want to make sure that piece of content that we're creating is really engaging. You know, it's not just a block of text. It's got headings that can break up the sections. We can throw in photos, quotes, videos is great. Adding video, embedding YouTube videos into posts has statistically shown to increase search reach by 20 to 30%. So it doesn't even have to be your own YouTube videos. It could be other YouTube videos that you found out there that you want to embed into your content. Maybe you have some graphs out there you want to cite. Could be interactive polls, could be social media proof, or social proof in general. Social media though, Twitter for example, really easy way to embed tweets into articles. So if you need to cite particular, could be well-known experts within your field, people have celebrity, another great way to create engaging content. Also, don't be afraid to go in depth. Well, the kind of recommended minimum is 300 to 500 words for a piece of content that you want to rank. Data has shown that 2,000 words is actually the point of diminishing returns. And that can be a lot of words. It can be intimidating, but these big articles work extremely well when it comes to Google. And part of it, going back to that table of contents, is if you're properly structuring those sections, you're giving it easy ways, the table of contents, to be able to jump around, you can have all those answers to their questions in one spot. And that is a lot more convenient for those end users. Plus, Google can analyze all that content to have a much better idea on what you're talking about. But at the end of the day, that can't be fluff content. It's got to be good, valuable content. And are we actually satisfying the searcher's intent? And what I mean by that is if somebody searches home maintenance checklist, and the first thing that we're trying to do is sell them home maintenance plans and tell them about our services, it's just not going to work because they weren't searching for those services yet. But what they were searching for was checklists. So let's make sure we give them everything that they need in terms of checklists and all that. And then maybe after we've helped them out, at the end we can say, hey, if you need help with this, look into our home maintenance services. But once you've got them on your page and you've engage them and help them out, that's when you can start to tell them more about who you are and your organization. And at the end of this, you're really asking yourself, is your article better than all the others online for that particular topic? And the best way to do that is to literally just go search, like if I want to do one on Craigslist, HTML guide, I would go search that in Google, and I would look at the top 10 results in there, because Google's already telling me that's what they, in their mind, view as the top 10 best results out there. So what I would do is I would go look at each one of those articles in the top 10, and I would make sure that I have all the content, all the insights from those articles included in mine. Not copying anything. We don't want to copy content. We want to say it in our own words, maybe from our own perspective. Maybe it's an updated version, because maybe the articles that we find in there are 5 years old, and so we want to give a 2021 update on what is the latest on that particular thing. But if there's no reason, if you have all the content on a particular topic in an article, in Google's mind, they don't need to send users to other places and all these different articles if that is the one-stop shop for people to be able to find their answer or satisfy their curiosity on a topic, maybe buy a product, whatever that may be. So just make sure at the end of the day, where you're going through all these kind of checklist items to make sure your content's optimized, make sure it is a great piece of content. All right, so ongoing optimization. So we figured out what are the targets that we want to go after. Then we built the content. Now we want to see what are the results and how can we further leverage it. And I think this is one of those areas where the ball really gets dropped when it comes to search engine optimization. We think of things like social media, like having to stay active on it, but we don't really think about that when it comes to search engine optimization, and it's not as much a set it and forget it these days. So we want to make sure that we're still staying on top of these articles so they can consistently deliver leads and sales, traffic to our site. So Google Search Console, again, is going to be our best friend. And Brad, if you wouldn't mind sharing a link to that again, just for anybody who may have missed that the first time through, this is your way of being able to track the results. And it's going to collect data directly from Google's search to give you some insights on where are people clicking, which articles are getting the most reach. And you can see some of the metrics right here. So total clicks, that's pretty straightforward. Just people that clicked on your result from the search results. These impressions are every time your page post shows up in a Google search result and somebody sees it. So this isn't somebody clicking on it, but they see it in the result and they're clicking on maybe something else or your article. This is the click-through rate, the CTR. So that is basically this 2,000 some clicks divided by 35,000 impressions. So it tells me of the 35,000 times this appeared in search results, about 6.5% clicked on that. Now, 6.5% is actually a pretty solid rate. A lot of times these come in at 1 to 2% for general topics like this. You usually see really high click-through rates for your brand name. So if somebody searches CYBERsprout, most likely they're searching for CYBERsprout. There's not really much in terms of competition there. But if it was something like website speed optimization, that's a general topic, it's going to be a lot more competition out there. And so click-through rate can tell me where are the pages where I'm getting a lot of reach, but people aren't clicking on it. And that could be a good indication that maybe my title in the meta description needs to be reevaluated or tweaked a little bit. It can also tell you where you're showing up in the rankings too. If you're already showing up in the top 5 spots, that's great. The vast majority of clicks goes to those top 3 spots. Almost all the clicks go to the first page. Kind of joke that the best place to hide a dead body is on the second page of Google, because almost nobody goes to the second page of Google. But what if you could go into Google Search Console and see what pages that you have that are just on the second page that you can optimize, maybe add better content to, maybe update for the current year, add some video, really beef that up. because maybe it's just there on the cusp, but it's not quite there. So you can look at those top 10 articles, see what they're doing a little bit better, and how you can brush up yours. And use this to really focus on your winners. If you have content that just isn't getting any traction, don't worry about spending a bunch of time, because really this is about leveraging your own time. Is you want to focus on the ones that are already getting traction. So typically this 80-20 rule applies here, where 20% of your most popular blog posts or pages are going to account for 80% of all search traffic. So focus on those 20% of winners that are already doing well on how can you make those articles better, or how can you write content that can help support those articles. Meaning that if like I had the home maintenance checklist one, that's kind of the overview of it. Maybe I have one article that's just dedicated to home maintenance in the fall, and it could be on the schedule and the checklist. And that's a great piece of content that now I can also link between the two of them, but it supports that main piece of content. Microsoft Clarity is a relatively new piece of software. And Brad, if you wouldn't mind sharing that link in the chat as well. This is free as well. Google Search Console is also free. This is not the same as Google Analytics either. This what's got some similar metrics to Google Analytics, which is more of a holistic, comprehensive view of all your website metrics. Microsoft Clarity really hones in on user engagement, and I think it's very valuable information. So what that can tell us is, where are people clicking on our content that's resulting in a dead click? And what I mean by that is maybe they click on an image, but that image isn't linked to anything. It doesn't zoom into it to show a larger view. Nothing happens. So it can tell us where there's dead clicks, where people are clicking, but nothing's happening. Rage clicks, which is probably my favorite new metric in terms of naming. I think it sounds funny, but rage clicks is very useful. That's when we've all done this on a website where we go there and something's not working, so we start clicking it a bunch of times to try and get it to work. That can also give us a good indication where people are getting frustrated. Maybe there's a sticking point. It can tell us how far people are scrolling down in our articles. If people are only scrolling down 20-30%, maybe only 15%, maybe the content isn't engaging them, it's not gripping them, it's not pulling them in. So we need to reevaluate how we're engaging with those users. And this metric as well is kind of interesting. It tells you how much active time on the actual page versus inactive time, meaning they have that tab open, but they're not actively viewing or engaging with your page. And the more that we can shift that to active time, the better. It also gives us a couple more advanced tools like scroll mapping, which would be a graph that goes right over the top of your page that shows how people are scrolling down your page, as well as heat maps. And here's an example of a heat map from one of the articles from Dealer Promoter Pro, and you can see where people are actually clicking on the page. And what's interesting about this is I can see here's where people are using the table of contents the most, so I can see what is maybe the more popular content when they get onto the page. But as well, this quote here, a lot of people clicked on this, but it's not connected to anything. So this would be like a dead link. So I should think to myself, how can I add a link or some resource or some way they can engage with that? Could be just as simple as a link going to that original source. It could be adding something in there that expands below it to show more information, a video on it, but it gives me, heat maps give me an idea on how people are engaging with my page. And heat maps don't tell me the answer. They don't tell me why people are necessarily clicking on that, but they can help me to ask the questions that I need to and start experimenting and playing around with that page to really hone it in and really optimize it. Now, there are a few other things to consider. How does your overall website affect your landing pages? Because while we're focused on this one page that we're creating or multiple pages, our overall website is going to affect how that landing page performs. And this can come down to things like sitemap. If you don't have a sitemap for your website, you definitely want to have one created. if you happen to use a popular website platform like WordPress, which is our platform of choice, a sitemap can be generated using a plugin, and that'll be an XML sitemap, which means it automatically updates when you add new content in there. And where that can be great is you can directly submit your sitemap on Google Search Console. So Google has essentially the blueprint to your site, and they know then when new content is being added and how it relates to each other and how it gets tied together. The other one I would recommend as well is Bing Webmaster. I would submit my sitemap to both Google Search Console and Bing Webmaster. Those are the two that are going to get your content out in the most places and give you good feedback. But again, I focus more on Google just because Google is 90% of the market share and Bing is only a small percentage right now, but it's a small step to take to get your content out there. Website speed, and this is a renewed focus of Google, 2021 especially. They came out with new metrics called Core Vitals or Web Vitals. And this is something that you can test yourself. You can go to, and actually I'll punch this one in here, gtmetrics.com is a great free tool to be able to go and test the website speed of your site for free. And what that'll tell you is these three metrics down here. LCP, which is largest content, paint, that really gives you an indication on when the majority of the visual part of your website loads. This TBT is time to first byte. How fast your website responds should be a few milliseconds. And then this one is an interesting one, cumulative layout shift. And this is definitely a newer metric in the fact that this is when you get to the site and after it's loaded, is the website continuing to change its layout and load stuff? And this could be something as simple as a slideshow, where the slides are changing, loading in new slides. It could also be, though, that you have a lot of advertising scripts on your page. And we've been to sites before where there's a ton of advertising, and as we're trying to click and engage with the content, all of a sudden ads are loading and shifting things and moving stuff around. And this is really Google's attempt to rein that in. So if you have no need to have things that shift your layout after the page loads, it's best to just leave that out. And you can see from that stat there on the left that speed matters, not even for search, because Google has officially said that speed is in their algorithm, one of the few times they've confirmed something that they use to determine rankings. But it can also affect your conversion rates. Nobody likes to wait on a slow page, so if it takes 4 or 5 seconds for a page to load, they may bounce, they may go somewhere else. So website security, this one's another one that over the last, I'd say 3-4 years has continued to gain more and more prominence. And it used to be that security was discussed with websites in terms of, do you have content that needs to be completely secured that people can't get to? Is it e-commerce? But really these days, every website should be fully secure. And that includes an SSL certificate, which is what helps give you this HTTPS or that kind of green lock button that a lot of times we see in our browser, which means the information being passed to and from the website is being encrypted in a way that people can't, if they do intercept it, they can't understand it. So it protects the information. Websites that are encrypted, and it's free to do it these days with the Let's Encrypt. This is a part of an initiative between Google and a lot of other big tech companies. These are free SSL certificates. We include this, for example, with our hosting for every site that we have because it's that important. Google has confirmed that that is another one of those factors that, so you get a little bit of a boost if your website is encrypted. Plus it can help build visitor trust. People like sites that, are fully secure. So wrapping this all up, I know that there's oftentimes a lot of questions. I would love to hear the questions that you have. If you want to go ahead and start typing in any questions that you might have, go ahead and punch those into the chat box down there. Could be something very specific to your site, could be a general question. sky's the limit, so I would love to hear what you guys are thinking out there. But I did want to touch base while you're looking at that on just a few key takeaways from this. And one of those is to make sure while we're optimizing for search, we're prioritizing the user experience. Meaning that while we're getting those meta tags and those links added in there, heading structure, stuff like that, we want to make sure that the end product is a great piece of content that's a good user experience. It's a fast loading site that has the ability to jump around with the table of contents, deliver the results, deliver to that search intent. There's a lot of things that factor into it, but the user experience at the end of the day is what matters most. And I always like to say that if you're creating the best piece of content out there, then you have Google in your corner. Versus if you're trying to trick and manipulate Google, then you're kind of going against the grain and it's much tougher. So these are kind of the takeaways from the whole thing. Again, make sure people over search engines. The best piece of content online, looking at those first page results for Google for your topic. If you're not sure where to begin, we talked about picking targets. Just go ahead and start writing about the things that you specialize in, the stuff that you know the best, the stuff that you like to write about that you think your clients are going to want to get some insight on. Because what you can do is you can write maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 posts, maybe just as simple as adding some question and answers in there, start putting content on your website, because then you can go look at Google Search Console to see, am I getting results back? And then you can take a look at the content that's in there and see which ones can you hone in on more. So maybe you did a 500-word article and that one's getting a ton of traffic. Now's the time to really beef that one up. When it comes to search engine optimization, you also want to focus on long-term success. Search engines are notoriously slower to move, but they also deliver results a lot more consistently, meaning that once you build your traffic up, that traffic tends to keep going along consistently every month and something you can build up. Whereas a lot of times from like social media, it's very erratic depending on how good a post is doing. You have to focus on the long-term success when it comes to search engines. And if you're wanting to learn more about search engines, we do have a couple other learning sessions coming up here. We have one that's going to be in person here in Alexandria, where our CyberSprout is based, coming up here on May 5th. And Brad, if you wouldn't mind sharing the events link, thank you. And then we're also going to have another one on the same topic down in Glenwood, and that one's going to be in person and virtual. So there will be a virtual component to that one, and that one is in mid-July if you want to check those ones out. And that is how to be found specifically on search engines in your local market. And that is a great topic because you have a big advantage over other much bigger brands and companies when it comes to the local search market. So thank you so much for coming to the session today. I'm going to jump to some Q&A. If you are interested, we are doing a audit special right now. So if that is something that you are interested in, that is one of our web specialists. We'll take a look at your site and give you our take and insight and recommendations based on your current site, and really helps to kind of shore you up and kind of get an idea on where you're at so you know where you need to go. Other than that, we specialize in the WordPress platform, whether it be website design, development, or WordPress hosting. So in terms of questions, so jump over here, Q&A mode. So Brad funneled one through here. Do I need to set up Google Search Console? Yes, that is one that you have to go through and set up yourself. It won't be automatically included in a website. It is free to do. Once you get that set up, the big thing is I would get that set up because it doesn't take very long to get it set up, and at least start collecting data. If you're not going to be actively using it, that's fine. At least get in there and set it up, because then you can start collecting that historical data, and maybe you'll get some insights from when you're ready to actively go and plan out content, do keyword mapping. You'll have that data in there ready to go. I'm not seeing any other Q&A, but one thing I'm going to do here really quickly, if you guys have any other questions, be sure to drop them in there, but I'm going to show you just a quick preview of what the Google Search Console interface looks like. So when you log in here, it'll give you this overview and it'll immediately go right to performance. And this is the website metrics that we were referencing earlier, where we can see, here's our impressions, we can add in click-through rate, our average position. But let's say I wanted to go in here and figure out what was my most popular content. So I'd come in here, I would hit pages, and we can see here that even though we have 59 pieces of content in here, the majority of the traffic is going to, this top 20%, if that. And so what I can do with that is, let's say I wanted to click on one of these. I'm going to click on this one. You can see it adds this article now up here to the filter. So now I'm only looking at the data for that one article. So I can see here's what people are actually searching to find that article. Now here's a good one, because I do have a few examples in here, but I don't have many. So this would be a good suggestion in terms of adding more content to there. Maybe I can add more examples in there, or maybe I can write a supporting blog post just dedicated to Craigslist HTML examples that links to this one. The cheat sheet and the codes are clearly where people are coming in here, so I need to make sure that it's comprehensive, it's got everything in there, and it stays up to date. Maybe it's been a couple of years since I did this. It has been about a year since I wrote this article, so maybe I need to go in there and do a 2021 update. And if we add click-through rate on here, we can see where is there potential for more growth. So you can see on HTML codes cheat sheet, this is a very high click-through rate. That's already doing well. But this one here for Craigslist HTML, it's only getting 3% of results. How can I maximize that to get more of these impressions every month? And if I can maximize that to just be 5, 10, 10% more, that could be an extra 10 to 20 clicks every month from this article. So that's the power of Google Search Console, and where you can really leverage that for your own marketing materials online. Well, thank you so much for coming today. My name is Tyler Goldberg. I'm here at CYBERsprout. I'm a developer and strategist. If you do want to reach out, if you have questions that you want to ask on a one-on-one basis, Tyler at cybersprout.net, or you can call 320-298-1177. I love chatting about this stuff, and I hope to talk to you soon, or see you at one of our upcoming learning sessions here in the near future. Take care and all the best.